The multiverse isn't exactly a new concept for superhero media. Even long before Spider-Wars, there were the many crises of DC or the flashes of two worlds. But TMNT Turtles 5 Ever stands as an important chapter in the lineage of dimension-hopping comic book escapades by using the concept to unite two different versions of the same franchise together. This TV movie is far from perfect, but I really admire the ambition of getting a little meta with it before really anyone else did, opening the door for a lot more nostalgia-driven multidimensional missions from many other mans of a spidery nature. Here's Turtles Across the Multiverse. After 7 seasons of bouncing between following the general plots of the Mirage comics, minus some major changes, and just doing their own thing with a very Eastman and Laird vibe, the 2003 Ninja Turtles series was kind of on its last legs. They had done everything you could do with the show by then. They'd beaten their nemesis pretty definitively, they'd been able to alternate universes, time traveled, and did a season in the future. All cartoons jump forward into the future for a little while once they're running out of ideas. Sometimes it works out, though. I love you, Batman Beyond. Back to the Sewer was kind of the last-ditch effort to revitalize the show with this weird, Tron kind of direction, while also just following what the new movie at the time was doing. It was clearly time to wrap it up. So what better way than to cap off the show by paying tribute to their roots and showing just how far the Turtles property had come in over 20 years since it had started. Turtles Forever is a multiverse story, which I know we're all tired of those by now, but it was fresh at the time. And they utilized the concept in a way that was really original. I think this is one of, if not the first example of a series using the multiverse as a way to cross over with an earlier iteration of the same brand. Maybe Scooby-Doo? Sure, they did a dimension hop to see, like, here's the Turtles as traditional superheroes, or here's a dark alternate future that was almost like a prototype for The Last Ronin. But this was them meeting the 1987 Turtles that made the series as popular as it is today. The Turtles of yesteryear getting to showcase their similarities and differences with the more contemporary version.
Turtle power! Don't you just love these guys?
Due to a random accident during a mostly unseen 80s turtle adventure, they and their enemies, Shredder and Krang, are accidentally bumped over to an alternate universe where Peter Laird had way more of a say in the production, so Bebop and Rocksteady don't exist because he didn't like them very much. They team up with their more comic-accurate counterparts and find a way home, while Shredder and Krang end up bringing about the return of the 2003 universe Shredder, who is kind of a blend of both of their characters, while also being more intense and intimidating than either of them. 2003 Shredder gets himself a functional body, takes over the 80s Shredder's resources, and uses them in a plan to kill all Ninja Turtles in every universe, so there's no one left to oppose him. Old meets new, and then they meet even older in a battle to save the
Turtleverse is like ginormous!
Oh, hey, that's a catchy name. Obviously, the 80s Turtles weren't terribly concerned with the continuity and storylines in the Mirage comics, so they went for doing their own thing in a way that pretty much defined the Saturday morning cartoon genre in the 80s. Animation that bounced between pretty impressive for the time to cheap as hell, bright and colorful characters with distinct personalities in a world of toyetic designs that all look so damn good on store shelves, and a theme song you just can't get out of your head. Unfortunately, that theme song was too expensive to license for 4Kids animation, so it's not in this movie. And that's where we hit a wall. It's not really the complete triumphant return of the 80s Turtles and all their glory that you'd hope for because of a little bit of cheapness. The 2003 Turtles were produced by Playmates Toys and 4Kids Entertainment, a licensing company that also had a cartoon programming block on the CW in the 90s and 2000s, where you may remember such classics as hilariously localized dubs of anime with heavy arbitrary censorship, cartoons that are obscure these days, but if you saw a clip from them, you'd be like, oh shit, I watched that. The hell was that called? God, it's gonna drive me crazy. What was that show's name? And I think a Viva Pinata cartoon. 4Kids didn't have a contract with the SAG-AFTRA union actors, of which all of the classic Turtles are. All of those actors are also based out of LA, and 4Kids was based in New York, so they would have had to require them to draw up a contract and pay extra money, and forget about it. They used the cheaper, non-union voice actors in all their productions, so they got some in-house 4Kids VAs to do the voices. Guys who were already in almost all of the 2003 TMNT series in various roles to begin with. So now, classic Leonardo sounds like Sonic X Knuckles over here, and Shadow the Hedgehog over there. That's for you, Jacob! much of a bummer as it is that it's not the real deal reprising their roles, this cast does a really solid job of sounding close enough. At no point was I distracted by them sounding wrong. Like, I can obviously tell the difference, but it's close enough that it didn't break the illusion of this being the 80s Turtles. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but I think they all did okay. So the big thing that everyone always talks about this movie is that there's kind of a subtle undercurrent of disrespect for the 1987 series. In fact, this crossover is somewhat infamous for that. There's a clear bias towards the 2003 Turtles as being newer, cooler, more competent, more edgy, and just generally more favored by the creators. Like, I get it. Peter Laird was heavily involved with the 2000s series, and obviously wanted a show that followed the comic more closely than the 80s one did. Him and Kevin Eastman were never huge fans of the big lore and narrative changes that show made to simplify the Turtles for kids. Major characters from the comics never appeared in that series, or if they did, they were way different and usually had a much smaller role. If I was the guy who wrote Mirage Turtles, I'd be biased in favor of the 2003 series too. That's not to say that the new series didn't also make major changes or cut out some big characters as well. But that show was made with Laird's oversight and blessing. It makes some radically different changes, but it's still generally following his stories in the comic as a blueprint and adapting major swaths of it almost word for word, or at least taking huge inspiration from the way it was written. The 80s show, while good, just wasn't. So what do people mean when they say the movie favors the '03 Turtles? Well, the 80s Turtles are written to be more childish, more irresponsible, more nonsensical, less effective at combat, and sometimes even, like, cowardly. They just keep getting beat up, or characters mock their idiosyncrasies, or they just aren't very helpful. They kind of look like punks in this movie, and that just doesn't gel with how they actually were in the 80s cartoon. I mean, they were silly, yes, but they were still brave and competent fighters. Sometimes the dialogue just feels like they're taking potshots at them. Though that's usually from Raph or the villains, so most of it is excusable. Okay, like, I understand that you'd want to showcase the differences between both takes on the characters, but there's a right and wrong way to do it. A lot of the time, they're getting misrepresented. Sometimes there's cool moments where the 80s Turtles go out in public because, as of Season 3 of their own show, the world knows about them and generally accepts them in public spaces. Originally, they'd be doing that hat and trench coat Ben Grimm look, so they'd be more conspicuous, but the majority of their show, they actually can go topside and live among the humans in short bursts. So forgetting briefly that they're in a different universe, they hop down to the street level and walk around undisguised and make a huge scene. That's a fun nod. That actually follows up on a little bit of continuity from their show. Then other times you have things like them saying they save April O'Neil once a day and having her act like a ditzy idiot instead of her actual personality. Like, yeah, the 80s show definitely had its own flaws, but that wasn't one of them, so it just feels like an unnecessary criticism the movie makes. It's kind of the same problem a lot of comic book crossovers have. Unless it's neutral ground like a big event comic, a lot of the time the guest character is made to look worse than whoever's title it is. Wolverine can be a loud, incompetent clown in Punisher's book and get completely humiliated by the cool, confident Frank Castle, but Punisher in Wolverine's book is treated like a creepy loser that the badass Wolverine beats down and then accuses him of being a little light in the loafers because it was the 2000s then, that was an insult at the time. It's the 2003 Turtles movie, so they take priority. Joke's on them, though, because despite being my preferred show, that one's basically fallen into total irrelevance and gets hardly any acknowledgement in merchandise compared to the old series. There's a brand new set of action figures based on the 87 Turtles every other week and a mountain of nostalgia-based merchandise. They're always showing up over and over because they're the most visually recognizable version of the brand. The 2003 Turtles just barely got some of their toys remolded and sold in stores again, so hopefully that'll change, but currently they're treated like the 5th most important version of the franchise. I will say, the art in this movie is amazing. This was pioneering multiverse crossover rules way ahead of Spider-Verse, because every universe and its characters have a unique art style, and they stay in that art style when they go somewhere else. So the '03 Turtles are shaded with 3-tone shading to make them look more detailed compared to the 2-tone shading of their counterparts. Maybe initially the 2003 show's line art style wasn't that far removed from the 80s show, but it was simplified over time to have a more angular, sharp-edged look. And they even fixed their weird eyes from Season 7 to create more contrast with the cartoony and friendly faces of the other ones. The animators on Season 7 implemented that since Playmates said they were going to be making toys only of the 2007 movie for the foreseeable future, and the show needed to match that somewhat visually. But Playmates wasn't producing Turtles forever. Only 4Kids was, so the artists decided to go back to the old style, and that works better for the purposes of this movie. Some of these designs still have some of that weird movie synergy baked in that I could honestly do without, though. There goes Splinter and his giant shoulder pads and his goatee, and you gotta put Casey in a red shirt, I guess, because he was wearing a red shirt. Even the backgrounds are really reflective of the proper universe, with the O3 world doing a more simple and flatly shaded background for everything, but the 80s universe having these detailed ones that look more hand-painted. They're all digitally colored, but the 80s style ones look so close to the original thing. So the more detailed characters come from a world with basic backgrounds and vice versa. They're like inversions of each other. It's subtle, but it's a great attention to detail. I reached out to Emilio Lopez on Twitter, and he told me about the process of creating the look of the movie. He ended up doing a lot of additional work on the film beyond his main role as the animated series character and prop color designer. Being the production team was small, and key people such as color supervisor Reginald Butler and series director Roy Burdine were let go or moved to other projects, the film needed additional help to get over the finish line. To help out Lloyd Goldfine, the executive producer and the second director on the film, Emilio did color art retake notes and drawings. He drew the recreation of the classic splash page at the end of the film, and even animated 2 shots for it. Even after the movie ran out of budget, he created the poster and promo art for no additional pay because he really wanted this movie to be the best it could be, since they all knew it was definitely going to be the finale. What a legend! The production team didn't have a complete set of model sheets or backgrounds to work with from the classic series, so Emilio and the team had to recreate a lot of it from scratch based on screenshots. They even colored the line art for the 87 characters with a brownish tint to give the look of the aging film cell animation. All they had on file from the original series' environments were the line arts to the backgrounds, without any colors. To get as authentic as possible, they had fans and collectors send in the original hand-painted backgrounds from the classic series for color references. These were used in the middle of the film when the cast got sent to the 80s world. I went through and tried to find the shots I think were the ones they used as reference, since I've never seen anyone do that before, and Emilio confirmed I actually got the right ones. A lot of love and care was put into recapturing the look of the 87 Turtles world, which is great because it helps to visually differentiate that universe a lot. I find this entire section of the movie so fascinating for the amount of work that went into it. It's a really great blend of new and old animation techniques. Unfortunately, the full cut of this film has become somewhat rare and hard to find. The first DVD release, and even the newest release on the full series box set, both include a truncated version that was cut down to fit in a TV time slot. So there's 8 minutes of footage that for a little while there was lost media. There was a European DVD release eventually with the full version, and since then a fan upscaled that to 1080p. I'm using that version for your benefit because the official releases of this movie are all in 480 and look really, really blurry. Even on the DVD it's not great. I really wish this would get a proper Blu-ray release one of these days, but I wouldn't hold my breath. The annoying thing is that the pacing is way worse than the TV edit, and leaves out a lot of crucial scenes that explain how characters get from point A to B. Like, otherwise, they just kind of show up places out of nowhere. It also helps Karai's character make more sense because her previous appearances in the main show made it seem like she was pretty much done working with the Shredder. Even though she ultimately betrays him at the end of this movie anyway, the extended version kind of makes it make more sense why she immediately shacks up with him again. If you can find it, I suggest watching the director's cut because while it's not substantially longer, the portions of it that were cut make it a better viewing experience. The movie culminates in all 8 of the Turtles seeing reality unraveling at the seams because the Shredder is trying to destroy Earth Prime in this corner of the multiverse. This movie actually operates on about the same logic as Justice League Crisis on Two Earths, where every universe is a spin-off from one original one, and if you blow up that one, it'll kill the entire multiverse. And the Turtles have teamed up with Batman via portals before, so this movie is technically connected to that movie via a few degrees of separation, but this Earth Prime and that Earth Prime don't look that similar. Sorry, this crossover stuff always sends me on a tangent. Earth Prime is the Mirage comics! Drawn in Eastman and Laird's signature black and white gritty art style with really square shapes and Those turtles have the big downward sloped noses. It's awesome. Then our heroes meet the bloodthirsty, revenge-obsessed Issue 1 turtles. That was them at their most Frank Miller murdery. They all settled down later in the books, but if this is meant to be during Issue 1, then they're all quite appropriately ultra grimdark and serious. Though the 2003 Turtles share a majority of their plots and story beats with these guys, they never had the same nonchalance about stabbing people, so it's fun to see them outclassed by a more lethal version of themselves. Then we have a total of 12 Ninja Turtles united to stop the Shredder, and even get help from Karai, Splinter, and the classic Shredder and Krang. Turns out destroying all of existence wasn't as popular with his villainous peers as he expected, because they like being alive. It has that kind of what would happen if crossover goodness you'd expect, like Utrom technology being fused with Dimension X technology to make the strongest version of his armor and grow like Krang to kaiju size. They also use the 80s universe mutagen rules to turn Hun into another giant weird Ninja Turtle. So they take a goon from that show and make him more like a henchman from that show. Can I still say goon? The special ends with everyone going back to their original universe, but it hangs on the Mirage Turtles for the epilogue instead, as a sort of touching tribute to the legacy they created and the real-life story of how they came together. That stuck with me as a kid for whatever reason, and I still think it's like a perfect ending to this special. In fact, it's like the final shot of the entire 2003 series, and I wouldn't have ended it any other way. The weird thing, though, is that this is far from the last time the 80s Turtles have crossed over with other versions of themselves from more recent shows. The 2012 TMNT show had a very similar crossover that actually recreates a lot of beats from this one. Though I think those same concepts were handled better in Turtles Forever, especially capturing the old art style. This looks too clean and digital, like it was animated in Flash. They also end up in the Mirage Comics world and have to run away from those scary-ass murder turtles, but it's not, like, animated as well, and it's more of like an afterthought. Also, the same rules of everyone's artwork don't apply. Instead, this is running on Jimmy Timmy Power Hour rules, where you adapt to the look of whatever art style you're put in. So it's interesting seeing the 80s Turtles in 3D. And Nickelodeon had the money to actually bring in their original VAs.
And you, Gappy? Why do you sound so weird? Me sound weird? Heard yourself lately?
The 2012 show was made with a lot more respect and reverence for the classic series. In a way, it feels more like a modernization of that than any other source material, so it's unsurprising that they actually had multiple crossovers with the OGs. The one thing missing from all of these is that the 80s Turtles never hint that they've done something like this before. I really wish they had just one line like, "Not this again," when seeing their alternate selves, just to acknowledge Turtles Forever as also canon. But then I guess someone behind the scenes wrote it under the assumption that it isn't the same 80s Turtles. It's one of those, another universe that's 12 inches to the left of that other one kind of things. So maybe this is the real 80s cartoon dimension, and the one from Turtles Forever is a slight variant where everyone's voices are partially off. Then the 80s Turtles bump into another group of multiverse schmucks in one of the summertime shorts, and they're going full Scooby-Doo team up and hanging out with one of everyone in the new comic series. I know there's an infinite number of worlds that look just like this one, but at some point, I'd like the classic Turtles to just ask why this keeps happening to them so often. I always get mad at YouTube for not putting my videos in the subscription box because people will comment, "Finally, Xavier uploads again after all these years," not knowing 3 other videos came out within the last month already. So maybe that stupid bell icon thing will help you remember I exist. If you want other ways to support the channel, you can always go hit up that Patreon for early videos and exclusive stuff because it's just $1. I'm not kidding, it's only $1. Isn't that cool? If just 5% of the people subscribed to me donated only $1 a month, I could make videos even faster and keep my house. You can also check out our merch on TeePublic, or just buy some of my random stuff on eBay. I have a pretty substantial collection of old toys that are still in the box in perfect condition, so go take a look in case you find something you like. And lastly, since this is a YouTube video and you probably play Fortnite, drop my creator code XavierGM next time you buy a silly dance or a cool character skin. Really helps me out. See you next time!